Everyone, welcome. We are talking once again with Andrew Seidel. He's a constitutional attorney. Is that the fair? Is there a better title? Okay, just constitutional attorney with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and we're talking about topical events, specifically something that happened here in my town recently. Y'all remember there was this cop who somehow. I guess her excuse was that she was sexting to her boyfriend and somehow ended up on the wrong floor, walked into the wrong apartment, didn't recognize right away that it was the wrong apartment, found another guy sitting on the couch watching TV that was an imminent threat. So she made sure to shoot him to death.
Yep.
And then and then because she also admitted on the stand that she had intended to kill him, didn't provide any CPR, didn't call for assistance in a timely fashion, all of these things, she meant for him to be dead. And so because of that, she was found guilty and of murder, and sentenced to 10 whopping years. Whereas if she was black and selling dope, she would have gotten longer, almost certainly. And the interesting thing about this was that the family, much to the family of the victim, forgave her in a kind of moving display. And I guess the judge was inclined to do something similar. And the only way that the judge knew how to do that was to give the murderer a Bible.
Yeah, her own personal Bible.
Her own personal Bible. That's touching.
Not just any Bible. Yeah. So she went back to her chambers, came back out, and presented Amber Guyger, the now convicted murderer, with this Bible. Had it stopped there, maybe there would have been a legit reason for that, because Amber Guyger, apparently, we've now discovered, or we are now being told, asked for a Bible. But that's not what happened. The judge then continued on and explained to Amber Guyger how to read the Bible, where to start. Start with the Gospels. You start right here with John 3:16.
Start reading the Bible at John 3:16.
Yeah, you started John 3:16. She told her to read it.
You start, in the beginning.
No. Why do that? You gotta skip right to the heart of it. John 3:16. Read it with Amber Guyger. Told her that it was her job to use that phrase, your job. This is a judge telling a convicted murderer, now a prisoner under armed guard, that it is her job to read the Bible. Start with the Gospels, telling her that she just needs a small mustard seed of faith, that God has a plan for her. So really, this is giving a Bible, reading the Bible, instructing an individual on how to read the Bible, and proselytizing, right? This is the judge giving her personal Christian witness in her official capacity as a state judge. It was way out of bounds.
And I want to be, I want to be human. I want to be forgiving, for people who just don't know. And I'm talking about a judge here. The judge is the person who should know better. But this is Texas, so we know what the cultural immersion is like. Mm-hmm. In the South. So she doesn't know better, and so somehow, and for reasons that have occupied an awful lot of my hours on internet conversations like this, that I don't understand why people look at the Bible and think that it has fuck all to do with morality. That to me is a complete mystery. But so be it.
I'm there with you.
Yeah. So but somehow they think it does. And they think that morality is enforced from outside, externally, and that if there wasn't a threat of a God, and I've heard many people say this, if I didn't believe that there was an inescapable God who was going to punish me eternally for all, then I'd go out raping and killing and vandalizing everything just for fun. Which tells me that if you even think that is fun, then you're not moral.
Correct.
We're done, right? But I understand that the culture is that somehow the Bible is supposed to promote morality, even though all the statistics say otherwise. Am I wrong about that?
No, I mean, I think that's a lot of what you're seeing, the argument that you're seeing right now. And if we want to steelman the other side, right, the best form of that argument is not necessarily related to the Bible. It's, look, This was a very emotional moment in the courtroom, right? The brother of the murder victim hugged the murderer, apparently was motivated by his religion based on the things that he said. And the judge just got swept up in this moment. And there can be no doubt, right? There's no doubt that we need far more compassion in our criminal justice system right now. Our criminal justice system is broken. There are hugely racist elements in the institution of our U.S. criminal justice system itself. It needs more compassion.
Statistically, I just want you, speaking statistically, would you say that if the black man on the stand who forgave the murderer, the blonde white woman, if it was the blonde white woman on the stand and the black man who just been convicted, do you think the sentence would have been different?
I mean, statistics show that almost certainly would have been. There's very little doubt. I mean, I don't know that the idea that entering the wrong apartment by accident would even have been. I think it would have been laughed at had the races been flipped in this case. Now, I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to race and the law. Those questions are fascinating. There are many very good legal experts. One of the best books to read it is Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, which really talks about how we've sort of had three major racial castes in this country: slavery first, then the Jim Crow, and that now the criminal justice system and the institutional jails and prisons are this third, essentially, caste system. And she makes a very convincing argument on that front. I would encourage people to read it if they want to understand more about that. And
Texas is among the worst,
yes,
in the country for the percentage of our populace that we have in prison. I mean, third world countries cannot compete.
No, I mean,
and the way Texas criminalizes their people.
And the United States is up there with some terrible countries when you look at per capita incarceration. It's very, very alarming.
Well, we may be up there, but I've heard we're number one.
I mean, if you look at the others that are grouped with us, my understanding is we're far and away number one.
Well, that was intended to be a joke because we're always America is number one.
Yeah. Yes, sorry.
It's in some of the wrongest ways.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
So getting back to the point, though, I mean, we both want to be human about this. And
yes.
I know that FFRF carries these things out to the letter of the law, and there are people who complain that there are moments like, well, this judge was emotionally involved. You know, she's been conditioned that whenever her religion is brought up, then she's going to be emotionally motivated, and that happens. So she's been, I don't know, is the word triggered? I don't know. I don't know what the response would be called, but you know, you have these associations, and so she gets into that. You know, the religion was brought up, the forgiveness, all of the little, I guess, triggers that would launch an emotional response, and she did. And so she's trying to be as compassionate as she can, and she does something that is, I'm guessing somehow the judge didn't know this was illegal. And can we blame that on the culture too?
I don't think we can. So this, again, you know, compassion is important, but this crossed the line from compassion, and it really went into coercion, because you have the judge acting in her official capacity in her state courtroom. She's wearing the judicial uniform, right? The robe. There are armed bailiffs standing on either side of this prisoner. Nobody is free to leave. And the judge is using that power of the state, that power that belongs to we the people, to promote her personal religion. And every judge knows that that's out of bounds. We hold judges to a higher standard for a reason. I mean, this is one of the key central principles when you are sitting on a bench. You have to be impartial. And it's not just that you have to be impartial, you have to avoid the appearance of not being impartial. And the judicial code of conduct and the judicial canon is very, very clear on this. It's any appearance that you're not impartial is problematic. And you know, too often.
Again, I got to say, this is Texas, and not just in this state, but in a number of other southern states. I've heard, and I know you have to have heard this,
Mhm.
where sitting judges in cases, talking to the jury or to the gallery, say things that on admitting that they're going to pursue their religious beliefs. It doesn't matter what the law says.
Yes, and I mean we've taken out other judicial complaints against judges in the past. There was one you may remember this one. This one made national news too. I think it might have been Tennessee, but don't quote me on that. A magistrate judge refused to allow parents to change their child's name to Messiah because there is only one Messiah and it's Jesus Christ. That was the reason that the judge gave, something along those lines. Instead, gave the kid a name like Brad or something like that. So we took out filed a complaint against that judge as well, and we won. That judge was bounced off the bench, no longer able to be a judge. And here, again, it crosses the line from compassion into coercion. And too often we see religion assisting the vulnerable as a means of converting the susceptible. And whatever you think of the Amber Guyger case and whatever you think of her, she was at a very low and vulnerable point in her life. And the judge was taking advantage of that. And remember, too, it's not just Amber Guyger. Everybody else was stuck in that courtroom too. Her defense attorneys could not leave, and they could not show any type of disagreement with what the judge was doing. Otherwise, they'd be jeopardizing their client. The bailiffs were stuck there, right? I mean, this was not just the judge and Amber Guyger having a private moment. This was a state official using the power of we the people to impose her personal religion on a prisoner, and it was way out of line.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know that the FFRF has been involved in other cases where what was done was illegal and needed to be addressed, but the common man doesn't seem to get the point of it. Right? So many people are like, well, what's the harm? And then you have the whatabouters, right? And so they're missing the point of this. Convey to those people what is the point.
Sure.
That need to be made here.
I mean, well, there's two. I mean, first, the whataboutery here, the whataboutery, which I'm pretty sure is a word, is actually, to me, it cuts in our favor, right? Like, if you support what this judge did, likely you're a Christian. And imagine if this judge had given out a Quran and told Amber Guyger that she had to worship Allah and that this is the passage of the Quran she should read, that it is her job to read it every single day. I mean, you can imagine what Fox News would have done if that had been the situation. It would have been an uproar. They would have burned down something over there, right? And to me, though, the central point here is something that we come back to in our work at FFRF all the time. And that is that one little violation of the Constitution anywhere is a threat to the Constitution everywhere, right? And it's not just a threat to us as non-believers and as atheists and secularists and skeptics, whatever you want to call yourself. It's a threat to everyone, because there's no such thing as the freedom of religion without a government that is free from religion. And when a state judge can use their judicial power to impose religion on people in her courtroom, that principle has been violated in a very real and alarming way that every American ought to be up in arms against.
Well, it's important that you bring up the what if the judge was Muslim kind of a thing, because that's the only time, to my experience, that American Christians ever understand what secularism is or what its value is. Mm-hmm. They want to do all these faith-based initiatives for faith-based schools and all like that, until they realize that it's going to a Muslim school.
Yep.
Oh well, no, we can't. First Amendment. So that's the first time they even remember that there is another amendment before that second one.
No, I mean you're absolutely right, and historically they're very short-sighted about that. There have been a number of cases. So, for instance, if you go way back to the 1980s. There were a couple of court cases where the courts were saying, look, public schools cannot allow Christian student groups to meet in them. That's not allowed. So Christians convinced Congress, conservative Christians convinced Congress to pass something called the Equal Access Act, which is why secular student alliance clubs are allowed to form in our public schools. And it essentially says that if the schools open up for any club that's not related to the curriculum, they have to open up for every club that's not related to the curriculum, be it Christian or atheist or what have you. And now, talking about their short-sightedness, the groups that are benefiting from that are the secular student alliance groups and the gay straight alliance groups, right? Because Christians are not oppressed in this country. They are not persecuted.
But I hear that all the time.
I know you do, but it's not persecution to say that you do not get to use the government to promote your religion. You do not get to use the machinery of the state to disseminate your religious message. That is not persecution, never has been. That is equality. But it's also the pushing back against Christian privilege, and that's what they don't like. And so
somebody in my own family said that they were oppressed by not being allowed to enforce their religious beliefs onto other people.
Yeah, I mean, they genuinely, I think, believe that. And you know, I know that the term privilege has a lot of baggage these days, but that is Christian privilege, and it is a very real thing in the way that maybe some of those other terms of privilege are not. Christian privilege in the United States is absolutely a thing. Christian persecution in the United States is not.
Okay, so the point about, or the discussion about how little good giving somebody a Bible in this situation is going to be, I mean, that's moot, right? I mean, that's not even, I mean, there's a valid discussion there, because
sure,
you know, a lot of us hold the position that there, you know, the placebo effect is about the best you can get, and that's all you can get out of that, and there's a lot more that is worse, but that's not even relevant to this case. Yes.
Well, it's not like Amber Guyger's going to have a hard time finding a Bible in prison either. I mean, they're probably the most widely available book in prison. I mean, the prisons are, I've written a couple times, I think I wrote something for Hemmant over at Friendly Atheist about this, about how prisons are used to really pressure prisoners into Christianity because of all of the favors and stuff you get. And then there's also, you know, you can do the Bible thing like Shawshank Redemption. Also, salvation lies within, and it's a rock hammer.
Okay. I guess if we've covered that one, I think you mentioned that there was another case that you wanted to bring up. I was curious to hear about.
Yeah, well, so FFRF just had another big victory this week, Monday, at the Supreme Court. So this is a case that we've been working on about a Bible class that's been happening in the West Virginia public schools. And the class has been going on for like 75 years, I want to say. I'm not the lead attorney on this case, but we are in some wrangling procedurally about the case. But the curriculum is hilarious. I mean, it teaches the kids that Adam and Eve coexisted with dinosaurs. And there's a line from the curriculum that's something along the lines of, I mean, imagine Adam and Eve with a huge dinosaur. They could slide down its back like a water slide. How wild would that be? That's in the curriculum that is being taught in our public schools, or was being taught.
Where is this?
That was West Virginia. So we sued over that. Our plaintiff avoided the harm of that class by transferring schools. And the other side of this case, Mercer County Public Schools, is represented by First Liberty Institute, which is not a bank. It is actually an anti-LGBTQ, a pro-Christian nationalist legal outfit from your neck of the woods. It's from Texas. And they argued that because our plaintiff avoided the harm of the class, she didn't have standing to challenge it. Which is nonsense, and no court has ever bought that argument. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected that argument, sided with FFRF and our plaintiff. And because with this influx of Trump judges, the opponents of state church separation, the anti-FFRFs, the anti-American atheists, the anti-Americans United, they are so entitled and so emboldened with this wave of Trump judges that they feel personally affronted when they lose. So they immediately appealed this to the Supreme Court, said, hey, Supreme Court, this is, even though everybody agrees that this is what the law is, it's wrong and you should strike it down. And the Supreme Court said on Monday, thanks, but no thanks, you're on your own, and rebuffed their clumsy advances. So that's a very nice victory for FFRF. now that means that the case can go forward on the merits. And we're actually going to take a look at that Bible class that teaches that Adam and Eve slid down the back of dinosaurs as water slides. So it should be a fun time.
So since this was the Supreme Court, it wasn't just, and it's not, I mean, this is going to be a federal ruling, right? I mean, does this have impact on Louisiana or Tennessee? Because there are states that have found loopholes in how to, any loophole they can find to find ways of teaching the Bible as history.
Yeah.
Or they'll do comparative religion classes and just forget the comparative part and only talk about Christianity.
Yeah, we see that a lot. So it's a great question. So that's called we call the precedential value. There's not much precedential value here because it's not on the interesting legal questions. It's on the merits. It basically was on, was this person injured enough that they can continue to bring the case? And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said yes. And the Supreme Court didn't actually issue an opinion. The bank-sounding First Liberty Institute just said, hey, we really want you to take this case. Please take this case. And the Supreme Court said, no, we're not taking the case. So it's just a one-line order saying, basically saying what the Fourth Circuit decided is correct, and that decision stands. So no real precedential value from that standpoint, but it does allow us to continue on with the case and get at those really interesting merits questions and whether or not this classes like this are acceptable, which the answer has got to be no.
All right. It's interesting. I had a conversation yesterday with a degreed biologist, doctorate. I'm not sure what the specialty was, but he seemed to be relatively familiar, at least with one aspect of our discussion. Mm-hmm. And he said he was talking about evidence for his belief system, and the evidence that he cited, as so commonly is, well, science can't explain this,
therefore.
Yeah, that's a God of the gaps fallacy. Yeah. And he said, no, it sounds like a God of the gaps fallacy, but it isn't. And he said that it isn't because he looks at DNA as being so elegant. I'm like, yes, something that's driven entirely by mistakes.
All that junk DNA in there.
8% of the genome is endogenous retroviruses. I mean, 45% has no appreciable function whatsoever, or is just copies of copies with a buggy enzymatic process. Yeah, that's so very elegant. But what he ended up saying later on was that his backup was scripture. The scriptural account. And I'm like, well, there you go. It's what I said in the beginning of the show. You're trying to preserve the mythology. That's what it's really about. It has nothing to do with the biology. So we've arranged to have another discussion on that topic.
I'm sure you will get him to admit the errors of his way.
Yeah, I doubt that. Somebody that is professional in the field, I don't see that happening.
You know, I've been talking a lot with people about this, about the value of debates and having these discussions and things, because I think a lot of people leave with, or they go into it with the expectation that, like, I should be able to change this person's mind like right now, and if I haven't, I failed. And I've never looked at it that way, having any of these conversations or even having a debate. You know, my goal is to plant those seeds so that the person goes and does a little bit of investigation on their own and eventually arrives at the correct conclusion.
I would say that the debates are largely pointless. Well, for the people on the stage, because the guys on stage are not talking to each other.
That's true. That's definitely true.
You've made your prepared statement.
It's for the
other
audience.
Person then ignores most of what I said. It comes up with some caveat or trick by which you can get out of the point. And so he's not addressing me, and I'm not addressing the thing that he just said, because now we've done our prepared statements before this ever happened. So how much can you really do, right?
Sure. Well, and I mean, I think that's right for the people on stage, but it can have an effect on the people in the audience. You know, so back in, I think it was 2002, Dan Barker, FFRF co-president, was debating a Christian I think it was on the topic, did Jesus exist? I think that was, or was he divine? Something related to that, here at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And this young guy who grew up in Catholic school was convinced Dan just got his butt kicked, right? Dan was wrong about everything. But Dan said a few things about the Bible that this guy didn't know about. And he actually ended up signing up for a comparative literature or comparative religions class and did a lot of research on some of the things that Dan said on his own, and eventually became an atheist. And now Patrick Elliott is the director of litigation here at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So, I mean, like Dan eventually won him over, and now he does what I do for a living. So it can have a real impact. But I think you're right about, I think you're probably right about for the people on the stage. I mean, I've never been convinced by anybody I've debated, nor have I been surprised by anything they've said in the debate. Mostly it's, I typically debate Christian nationalism though, and the history of America. So
well, I want to say that I know that several people have said that the Bill Nye Ken Ham debate changed their mind. That was the thing, that Ham lost that so profoundly that a significant percentage of his own congregation changed their minds, or at least they posted online that was the moment that did it for them, was that debate. I mean, so those debates can have an effect. But when you're talking about arguing, let's say in a debate, you're both live on stage, and this guy brings up what some scientist, uncertain anonymous scientist supposedly discovered, right?
Sure.
And in my experience, I constantly hear about things like, like blood and DNA being discovered in dinosaur bones and other things that the scientists said that when they, but now if you could read the document, if this was a written debate where they cite their source, they make their claim, and then you read the thing before you respond. When I do that, consistently I discover that, hey, this paper doesn't say what you said it did.
Yes. Same thing happens here. I've been in that same boat, including with misquotes of the founding fathers.
But you can't do that when you're on stage.
No, you can't. I mean, you have to try to predict it, and you have to have a few things in your back pocket. But for what you're talking about, where they're citing an esoteric biological paper, it's not possible to do. And it seems a little churlish to go back and fact check things later on after a debate. But sometimes you have to do it.
Yeah, and my last debate went much like that. I'm like, what the hell's this guy talking about? So I go back later and look it up. And I'm like, I see what that trick was. All right. So anyway, I think we've obviously gotten on topic, or off topic rather.
That's all right.
Always fun to talk to you, sir.
You as well. And I had a blast. Thank you so much for hosting when I was down there in your neck of the woods in Dallas. You plied me with all those delicious beers, and that conversation was a lot of fun. So,
yeah, well, you filled the house, so that was amusing. It was awesome. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to let you go. Close this out. Andrew Seidel, FFRF. I'm going to let you say one last thing before I hit this button.
There is no freedom of religion without a government that's free from religion. Join FFRF and help us fight Christian nationalism. How's that? Was that good? Okay. All right. Thank you, my friend.